Welcome back. We are continuing with our exploration of visualization topics, and the next one that we have here is, and which we will cover in the video, is the so-called high traffic type of position. As I explained in the previous video, these are the positions where there is a lot of pieces clustered on a small area of the board, and when you're trying to calculate variations and visualize the exact position, sometimes the problem is that exactly this small area of the board gives you some problems with visualizing which squares are exactly covered or attacked, which squares or which pieces are disappearing off the board after exchanges, and things like that. So just like some small details that can be very important, but could be easily missed because the area is so small that it makes it a bit more tricky. So, for example, if you have ever tried to solve these funny looking checkmates in 2 or checkmates in 3, where there is a lot of pieces in unnatural squares or they're close to each other, you get this kind of feeling that they're difficult to solve because there's just so many pieces in the small area of the board, and sometimes in chess we get such positions. So you have to really focus fully to realize exactly where the changes are occurring once you start visualizing things. And so this video will be devoted to this topic. So it's mostly like a practice video, so you can take this as a training. As I said, try to visualize things without moving pieces on the board if you're using a chess set. And also I will not make moves before we actually see the whole variation in our mind. So we start with this example right here, where it is black to move. So first of all, we can see that material is equal, but black has an opportunity to win some material with the move knight takes a2. Another forcing move that we have is rook takes b3, but this move doesn't accomplish too much. In fact, it improves white's pawn structure. So after something like rook takes b3, a takes b3, rook a3, white can go rook b2, protect his pawn, and then there is really not much advantage for black anymore. However, the knight is hanging on b4. So if black doesn't have any better move, he should take on b3. But let us take a look at the more forcing move, knight takes a2. We're trying to win a pawn. After knight takes a2, white takes on a3, obviously. And now it seems like black is just losing a piece. Because if rook takes a3, knight takes a2, we lost the knight. At the same time, knight takes c3 doesn't work because rook takes c3. White is up a full rook. And then you might just kind of stop and think that this doesn't work. But you have to expand your search for candidate moves. And actually, like we said many times, first you should look at checks. We have already looked at one, knight takes c3. Since that doesn't work, we have to look at the other one, knight c1. No matter, even if it looks ugly, knight c1 should be checked. So let us look at this. Knight c1 check. If the king goes to d1, now we can take the rook on a3. And suddenly we realize that actually this works perfectly for black, because white cannot take this knight on c1 with his king, because rook takes c3, which is a check and also an attack on the bishop on f3. So black is winning a full piece in this case, not just a pawn. Now, how difficult was this for you to visualize? Did you have to come back to the start? This is a fairly simple exercise in high traffic. You can see that A lot of pieces have changed their squares. There was a lot of piece exchanges, a lot of contact between the pieces on this small area of the board, basically on these squares A2, A3, B3, and C3, pretty much. This is a very useful practice to solve such positions, especially if this is somewhat difficult for you to solve. However, if you solved it fairly easily, this is good. Then the upcoming exercises will not be that difficult. Now let us see how this looks actually on the board. So knight takes A2, the rook has to take it. And now knight C1 check, take, rook takes here, and as we saw, king takes C1, there is a double attack here and he's winning a piece, so maybe white has to make a move like rook C2, but okay, then black's variation is a success because he has won a full pawn and he has a clear advantage otherwise. Okay, now let's take a look at another nice example of high traffic. Again, you can see that there are a lot of pieces on this area between in the square D1, D3, B3, B1, and also knights. Knights are tricky, especially when it comes to these the high traffic type of exercise. They can jump around and confuse us. So it's important to really focus in such positions. So here it is black to move. He's down a piece for 2 pawns, but if he just reacts with the move like rook a3 without calculating any special variations, it means that after rook e1, white will keep his material advantage and good chances to win the game. And this is why we have to look at the forcing moves first. We have to force ourselves to calculate this. So knight takes d1, obvious candidate. Knight takes b3. White responds in kind. And now we have an important position. What to play? First idea is, of course, to take back on b3 with the rook, but then white rook takes on d1, and it protects the knight on d3. Now you have to see that these knights have disappeared both from d2 and c3, and that because of this the knight is protected. So you see, like this, rook takes, and everything is fine for white. He's still up a full piece. Okay, now let us come back here. After knight takes d1, knight takes b3, does black have any other candidate moves? Of course he has another capture, bishop takes d3, so we have to look at this. And he has an attack, knight e3, so it's attacking the bishop on f1. And after that it's threatening knight takes f1, bishop takes d3. So we have to investigate these two moves. Now bishop takes d3, of course, should be looked at first, but just for demonstration purposes here, I want to look at knight e3 first. So, in case of knight e3, what does white do? His knight is on b3, it's hanging. Black knight is on e3, and it's safe. And black is threatening knight takes f1. So white cannot play just a move like bishop e2, because of rook takes b3. So it means that probably he should move his knight from b3. But where to go? If he goes knight d2, we'll take the bishop on f1 and the knight on d3 on the next move. So, like this. Knight e3. You can't just go knight d2, because I'm taking this, and I'm taking the knight. So this looks quite interesting. And what should white do? Well, he has, fortunately for him, he can save his piece with the move knight takes d4, and after take, knight takes f5. Now, I've given this position to a lot of students, and it's a really great exercise for this type of visualization. And sometimes it happened that they missed the move knight takes d4 because they completely, in their mind, they just didn't think that taking a pawn is possible. And I've seen this quite often, and I was surprised. Somehow maybe there is a barrier to capturing this pawn, I'm not sure. But most of them would say knight d2 in this position. Now, of course, not in this exact position, but in the starting position. So this is a visualization exercise, so we're looking at this from the start. So yeah, somehow after knight takes d1, knight takes b3, knight e3, a lot of people would forget that knight takes d4 is even possible. So in such cases, it's always important to look at captures first, as I said. Now, knight e3 doesn't work then. So we are still in this variation, knight takes d1, knight takes b3, knight e3 is out of question. So the last move that we said that black has is bishop takes d3. Now, he will take it back with the bishop. If he takes the knight on d1 instead, we are taking the bishop on f1, and on the next move we are taking the knight on b3, and we will be at least up a pawn. So this is how it goes. Take, bishop takes d3. So in this case we said bishop has to take on d3. In case of this move, we are taking here, and then we're going to be up a pawn. Let's say he takes like this, moving our bishop, and this is very good for black. So far things are working, but what if the bishop takes on d3? This is our main variation. So let us again come back here, test our visualization of high traffic situations. So knight takes d1, knight takes b3. Bishop takes d3, bishop takes d3. So on the board we have white knight on b3 and white bishop on d3 and the rook on c1. And black has only his knight on d1 and rook on b8. And looks helpless for black, but let's see. So if rook takes on b3, rook takes on d1, we already saw that this is good for white. He's up a piece. What else can he do? Well, if the capture doesn't work, we look at the next forcing move, which is an attack. And what can we attack in this position? We can attack the bishop on d3 with the move knight b2. So now we have twofold attack, basically. We're attacking both the bishop and the knight. So the only move to protect both pieces is bishop c2. And now this is the key moment. What does black do here? And this is another moment where a lot of people just simply don't see a resource for black, which exists in the position. Because so many pieces have moved already that it's a little bit difficult to visualize the exact position. So take some time. Then eventually you will find that black has a winning move, d3. He pushes his pawn. It's very easy to forget about this pawn. It seems like it's irrelevant, but actually this is the key figure in the whole variation. So this combination for black would not work if there wasn't for this pawn. d3 attacks the bishop, and if the bishop goes to d1, knight takes d1, rook takes d1, and rook takes b3, and black is winning. A really nice combination. Let's look at this again. Everything comes with forcing moves too. So with good calculation technique, it shouldn't be difficult to spot these moves. The question is, can you visualize all of that? So d3, and when the bishop moves, take, and yes, after this we are getting our piece back with 2 extra pawns, so this should be winning. So this was the second example. Let's look at the third example here, and Once again, I will flip the board, since it's black to move. So, once again, we see how many pieces are here on the small area of the board. It's easy to somehow get confused here. But okay, let us see now. It is black to move, and he has two captures that have to be considered immediately. Bishop takes h2 is not an option. So bishop takes d2 and bishop takes f5. Bishop takes f5 is not actually forced because, although, yeah, we can consider bishop f5 first, let's say. Bishop takes f5, queen takes f5. What happens then? We can attack the queen with knight e7. The queen goes to d3, perhaps. Knight goes to g6. This looks quite equal to me, so something like this. Knight e7 tempo, knight g6 tempo. Okay, bishop can come here. If you calculate this variation and conclude that it's around equal, you would be right. But doesn't mean that you should play it. We have to still consider another option. Bishop takes d2. It's a forcing move after all. So bishop takes, knight takes. Now, what to do? We have, besides bishop takes f5, which we saw doesn't do much, we have one nice move here. We have an attack. And this move is queen f4. It's a double attack, attacking both the bishop on f5 and the knight on d2. So, in this case, what should white do? Probably he should just go bishop takes g4, otherwise I don't see any way to protect both. So bishop takes g4, knight takes g4, but now again I have a double attack. I'm threatening both queen takes h2 checkmate and queen d2, winning the knight. And the only way to protect against both is knight f3, knight coming back to f3. Now you have to visualize this position, because a lot of pieces have disappeared off the board. There is knight on g4, queen on f4 for black, and there is a knight on f3 for white, and nothing else. Two pairs of pieces have disappeared. And it might seem after knight f3 that white has solved his problems, but we have another, we don't stop there, we have another forcing move, knight takes h2. And like this, once he takes back on h2, we are taking his bishop on h4. And with this small combination, we have won a pawn with black. All of this was forced. So, again, it shouldn't be that difficult to spot all these moves if you have a good calculation technique. So we take it, let's see it now on the board. Queen here, double attack, probably has to take it, knight f3. Now if I have given you this position right here, of course this is not such a difficult tactic to spot, but 3-4 moves ago, you have to actually visualize it, to make the decision to take on d2. Because if there is no knight h2 in this position, then maybe there was no even point of playing like this with black. So the whole variation hinges upon this move, knight takes h2. Knight takes h2. If bishop g3, we have a check, very important, knight takes f3. So knight goes here, and we are winning a pawn. But as I said, it has to be foreseen all the way from here. It has to be visualized for this bishop takes d2 to work. Okay, let us take a look at another slightly more complex example. And somehow all of these examples are with black, so I always have to flip the board. But that's okay. Let us see now. A very interesting example, high traffic, because there is a lot of contact between the pieces. A lot of pieces are hanging or will be hanging. There are pins, possible checks, checkmate ideas, and so on. So black to move. A lot of pressure on the f6 knight, and obviously one of the captures on e4 has to be considered, or both. So first, if bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4. This looks good for white because we can't now take back with the rook. We are going to lose this rook. So to bishop f6, knight f6, knight f6, this. And then he's taking the rook. So this we can immediately kind of discard, although it is possible to play like this and then try to hold the position, but okay, black is worse in this position. So we have to also consider the other capture on e4 with the rook. The advantage of such a move is that if he takes back with the bishop, bishop takes e4 for black comes with the tempo. And then, let's look at this line first. So rook takes e4, bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Also you need to, in such variations, you need to keep track of material. So in this case, black is up. He has, on material, he has 2 pieces for a rook. Now, black bishop is on e4. Kind of a problem, if you look at it first, is that he can play either bishop takes f6 or knight takes f6 in that position. First of all, if he takes with the knight, knight takes f6, in that case we can take back with the pawn. This is very important, because we are attacking his bishop on g5. And so when he takes on e4 with the queen, queen takes e4, f takes g5, and the material count is the same. Black has 2 pieces for a rook. So this is how it looks like. Rook takes e4, bishop takes, bishop takes. So if he takes with the knight, we take back with the pawn. Because now we are attacking both his pieces. And finally, this is great for black. He won material. Okay, so this looks fine. This is maybe the first variation to look at. Another one is also after rook takes e4, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4. It is knight takes f6. What happens after knight takes f6? It's a check. In this case, I want to say bishop takes f6. In this case, it's a tempo on the queen. And if you take back with the knight, we are going to lose material. So it goes like this. So I did calculate knight takes f6, but here the variation that we want to look at is bishop takes f6. So if knight takes back, takes, wins the bishop. So the variation that you have to calculate here is bishop takes f3. Then he takes our queen, and here the point is that this knight on h5 is hanging. And after that, when he takes on c7, the rook moves. Again, black has won material, 2 pieces for the rook. Although in this case, white has 1 pawn for that, so his chances are better than in the previous variation. But nevertheless, black is the one playing for win in such a position because 2 pieces are stronger than a rook. So this variation also looks very good. After rook takes e4, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, none of the captures on f6 are working for white. That means that white has one more resource in this position, and this is not to take on e4 immediately, but take on f6. Now, we have, I believe, seen what happens if he takes with the knight. So we take back with the pawn, attacking the bishop. Just by transposition, we will reach basically the same position. We have already seen this position, only in a different move order. So this is good for black. And then one more thing here is that after rook takes e4, there is bishop takes f6. And this one is the most tricky, because now knight takes f6 doesn't work, as we saw before, but also we are not attacking his queen. So this is the critical position. We cannot capture his queen on f3 like we did before. So what to do? Our queen is hanging, we can't take on f6, and this looks like a desperate situation. However, we have a move here. And this is probably the most difficult part of this puzzle, is to find this move for black. So after rook takes e4, bishop takes f6, we have a counter attack on his queen, and this is rook takes d4. And now I will make this on the board because it's becoming quite complicated. To make it simpler, so rook takes d4, discovered attack on the queen, and now all the tactics work out for black. So first of all, if he takes the queen, then we're taking on f3, and this is immediately winning. What else? He cannot take the rook on d4, so he has two moves here, or let's say three moves that we can still consider. First one is check. Bishop takes h7, we should look at that. The idea is after king takes, then he moves his queen and threatens something like a checkmate, or at least to win the queen. The second one is queen takes b7, but we can easily discard this one because rook takes b7, bishop takes d8, rook takes d3, should be winning. And the last one is queen f5, threatening a checkmate. So we have to see all of these moves. Now, first of all, let's look at check. Bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7. Now another check, queen f5, but fortunately we have this move g6. Another interesting variation that could happen here is if he moves his queen. This looks like a cunning move here. Queen h3. Attacking my queen and threatening a discovered check. But is this enough for white? Let us look at this. Knight takes a discovered check. We go here. Is this going to be a checkmate or not? See, with all these black pieces taking squares away from the queen and the knight, I don't believe that he can do anything here. So I don't see anything, at least for white, so I think that black is just going to be up a piece, and this queen h3 doesn't work after all. Now let us see. I could be wrong, of course, but this is what I can see from here. Definitely this shouldn't work for white, as far as I have checked this position. The other move is queen f5, and again there is this move g6, and after he takes the queen, we are taking his queen, and we are going to be up on material. So queen f5, g6, takes, and we are up a piece. So let's say after something like this, he can win our rook, but only for a piece, so we're still up on material. So I think that we have looked at all the possibilities in this critical position. Very complicated one. After rook takes d4, I think that we haven't missed anything. Yes, queen f5, g6. So, really high traffic. Very complex position. In such cases you might need to spend like maybe 20-30 minutes on this move to work out all the details, all the tactical details. Let us see kind of a similar, but I think a bit simpler example. Not surprisingly, again, it's black to move. So black's queen is hanging. He has nowhere to go, but he has a nice counter attack, and it's not too difficult to spot that this move is knight d5. So the point now is that if he moves his queen, if white moves his queen somewhere, the queen has finally somewhere to go. It's probably going to be f4 square or maybe e7. And so the fourth line that we really have to calculate here after knight d5 is to, after knight takes f6, knight takes e3. This is the variation. So let us focus now on this. Knight d5, knight takes f6, knight takes e3. Now white has one idea here. Rook takes c7, and with this he's threatening a checkmate. Knight takes f7 checkmate. So we cannot take the rook on d1. because of that checkmate. Now if you can see it, that's perfect. If not, let us show it. Let me show it here. Rook takes c7, and now you can't take here because of this really nice checkmate. So white has some ideas here, and we have to be careful. So let's look one more time. Knight's take on f6 and e3, and white rook takes on c7. So here, besides rook takes or knight takes d1, also bishop takes e7, taking the rook is losing to the same checkmate. So we have to consider the other two captures. There is a capture h takes g5 and another capture g takes f6. So we can take pretty much all of white's pieces are hanging, but only one capture is good. Which capture between g takes f6 and h takes g5 would you prefer? Well, I think if we use simple logic, we should just eliminate this knight from g5, which is threatening knight f7 checkmates. So let's focus on this move. H takes g5. Now, if you're keeping track of material, as you should, how much, what's the material balance here? So you should have black as having an extra piece in this position. So black is up a piece, and it's white to move. Now what does white do in that position? So his rook, both of his rooks are hanging. If he takes on e3, then bishop takes e7. So he should do something about that rook on c7, so it's not hanging. So we should look at this move, rook takes c8. So it's a kind of a desperado motive. You are gonna lose this rook anyway, so you might as well give it up for a full piece. So rook takes c8, and then if rook takes c8, f takes e3, g takes f6, and this looks roughly equal to me. Let's make these moves on the board. So as I said here, black is up a piece, and he's threatening to win both rooks. But there is this nice move for white, rook takes c8, and if we take it, he takes it. Now white is up a piece, and g takes f6, and this should be roughly equal with opposite colored bishops. So here, after rook takes c8, what should black do? There is, besides rook takes c8, there is also move knight takes d1 that has to be considered. So let's look at that. Knight takes d1, rook takes d8, bishop takes d8. And now it looks like a big problem for white, because he's threatening to lose a piece. But he has one possibility here to save a piece, and this is the move bishop c2. It's attacking the knight on d1, which is undefended. So if we take his knight on f6, he will take our knight, and again the opposite colored bishops look quite drawish. So it goes like this. Looks lost, but he has this move. And then if we take it, so something like this, again looks quite drawish. So that's okay, but can we do something better? Let's come to this position. After bishop c2, what else can we do? There is a move knight c3, and with this move we are threatening knight e2 check. So once he moves his knight, like knight e4, we have knight e2 check, king f1, and knight takes d4, and everything works out perfectly because also we are attacking his bishop on c2, so we're winning a tempo to win also the pawn on h4. So this is how it goes. Knight goes here, white has to move his knight, and he would like to take here, but check, tempo. Then once the bishop moves, we are taking here, and okay, if you have calculated also this variation, that's great. So that's the end of a very forced variation, something like this, where black is finally up a pawn, a full pawn in the endgame, and should win. So look at this. We got into this kind of quiet endgame all the way from here by force. Really, really beautiful, actually. The way things have worked out for black, and also if you are able to visualize all of that from the start. Again, you might need like 20-ish minutes to find all this, but if you're able to visualize all of that, it already shows that you have really good skill in this area. And let's see one more example. I really don't know how this is possible that all of these are for black. Really interesting coincidence. So here black to move. Again, high traffic because look at all of these pieces lined up on the 5th rank. It's easy to miss some detail if you're not careful. So black to move, he has of course to take care of this d5 pawn. It's very important, but a move like rook d6 should be considered after the forcing moves. So let's look at the forcing moves first. Knight c4 tempo, but the queen can go to f4. There is another way to attack the queen, and it also comes with a capture, and this is this move knight takes f3. Now we're raising the stakes because the position becomes extremely sharp. But the idea is that if he takes back with the pawn, we have queen h2 check, and at least there we will have a perpetual check, but there is a pretty good chance that we will actually have a strong attack. So let's make some moves to confirm this. Check, check, and now if I want to make a draw, that's always good to have a draw in your pocket, but since the king is so weak, even though we're down on material as black, we can, well actually material is kind of imbalanced, so we can't say that black is even down on material. So here we can make some move like rook e5, and then it's a tempo. Also when he moves his bishop, we can bring the other rook into the attack, maybe play rook e1. And another big point is that he cannot really develop his remaining forces because of the spin. So this looks great for black, and it should definitely help us make decision here about knight takes f3. So if this was white's best move to take with the pawn, then definitely knight takes f3 looks good. However, there is this move queen takes d5, a counter attack, and now things become really interesting because a lot of pieces are hanging, the rook on a8, the bishop on g5, knight on f3, and finding the best move in this position is quite difficult. But there is this move rook e8 that you can see it here. Rook coming to e8, which looks good because if he takes the rook, we have knight g5, and then when the bishop moves, we can go rook e2. And this move was played in the game, but it is not the best move. And the reason is that black missed a very simple idea in that position. So let's see if you can find it. Why is rook a to e8 not winning for black? So bishop takes e6, knight takes g5, and now what does white play? He has this move bishop takes f7. Of course, checks should be considered first, especially if they come with a capture. And now the problem is that we cannot take back with the knight because the queen on h5 is hanging. So this is a good example of high traffic. A lot of pieces here on the king side, and it's easy to miss that after bishop takes f7 we cannot take back with the knight. That means that we have to take back with the bishop, with the queen on f7, and then after queen takes f7, king takes f7. This is just a very equal endgame, equal material, quite symmetrical as well. So let me show you. So this. See, some pieces have moved from the 5th rank, and now knight takes f7 simply doesn't work. We have to do this. Okay, and this should be a draw. So hopefully this was helpful as a practice. There is really not that much instructive material here. I mean, it's mostly practice. What you will also get a chance is practice this with the quiz section. Some of these exercises with high traffic might be quite difficult, but it doesn't matter. Try to practice it and take your time. If you need 20-30 minutes, that's okay. If it takes more than 30 minutes, you can probably quit and see the solution. But still, definitely a good way to practice your visualization. So, in the next video, we will complete this topic by looking at the third type of visualization scenario, which is calculation of long variations, or the so-called bare trunk.